Hey everyone, what's going on? Thanks for checking in our latest Trade to Black podcast. I am your host, Shad Dales. Well, it's been about 2 weeks since the news came out of Washington regarding regulation and the hemp industry and how it's going to be a 1-year timeline. So, what happens next, and what are some of these companies going to do as far as preparing themselves over these next 12 months? And really, what's the chatter amongst the hemp industry right now? So, we're going to dive into that on this morning's basically podcast and find out more on what we can learn about the other side, which is the hemp side, as many companies are, like I said, gearing up for changes that are going to take place over the next 12 months. So with that, let's welcome in AV, and good to see you. How are things?
Good. Ready to dive into a conversation on a product that I truly do like.
Happy Apple you're talking about?
Hemp beverages and happy apple in general, yes.
Yeah, I was going to say. With that, let's welcome in John Kueber, CEO of Nevis Brands, back to the podcast. Good to see you. Second time on the podcast, but we got some good responses from you from the first one. How are things? How are you enjoying your summer? And I know you got back from a big conference in Atlanta, which was telling for the hemp industry. And that was in and around the time the news came out from Washington regarding this timeline of 12 months. And surprisingly, some of the feedback that you'd mentioned to Anthony and I was that a lot of the hemp players within the industry are open arms and accepting this and actually agree with it. So maybe elaborate off a little bit more on some of the things that you heard while you were at this conference, because arguably it's one of the biggest conferences for the hemp industry across the U.S. Annually. So maybe touch on that a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah. First off, thanks for having me back. Great to be here. Good to see you both. Summer's going great. And yeah, aside from some mild dread going to Atlanta in July, it was fantastic to get to the Hemp Beverage Alliance and their conference, which coincided with the Beyonce concert, which was kind of an interesting mix.
Oh, okay.
For us all, lots of interesting people in the same location as the conference. So,
wow,
fun time. But yeah, the Hemp Beverage Alliance is a relatively newly formed group. It's been around for a couple of years as hemp beverages have sort of grown in popularity, and this is the second annual conference that they've done. And it did coincide with a lot of the regulations coming down, a lot of the different messaging that came out of Washington and elsewhere. Texas was still sort of brewing as well. So, when you go to these conferences, you do get a lot of, people are always looking at the glass half full. People tend to spin things a certain way.
Yeah.
But truly, I think some of the messaging that came out is, okay, we had this year for people to get things figured out. People look at Texas almost as a proxy, I think, for the federal level of there's going to be people saying we want outright bans. There's going to be people saying we need to do this to protect the kids. We've got to get rid of these products altogether. But then you also have other people, I would call them the saner minds, who are strongly appealing for, no, this industry has inertia.
Right.
Here to stay. Inertia is a big thing, and I think just American politics and society, where if something is there and going relatively well, it's very difficult to put it back in the box. So people saw this year-long quote, we're going to wait a year before we ban it, as no, this is a year for the federal level to come up with their equivalent of SB 43, which is sort of the bill that's going through Texas right now in terms of regulation. Oh, is it going to be the same as SB 43? No. But the tea leaves would appear that this is a year for democracy to run its course, for Congress and the Senate to battle it out, and to come up with something that the hemp industry definitely wants, and that is regulation and standards. We're all craving that. We all want to build products that are safe, accessible, and fun. But just tell us what the guidelines are, and we'll abide by them. I think at Nevis, that's how we like to operate. We operate in 10 regulated markets, and rules are good. It sort of levels the playing field. The hemp industry is still very much a wild west, and I think the people who are doing the most volume truly want some guidelines on how to build their businesses and treat consumers fairly.
Yeah.
Within the industry and within this next year-long period, is let's say we get things figured out. Texas has some sort of clear direction. The Farm Bill has some sort of clear direction. How much influence do you think the alcohol industry has on the future of hemp versus the actual operators that are currently in the hemp space? It's been no secret that the WSWA has done fly-ins to DC The alcohol industry is lobbying in Texas. They see beverages. They love beverages. It's going to be a growth driver for their business moving forward. How much influence do you think they have on this, on moving forward?
I'd ask the question back, then I'll comment. Is when's the last time we've seen the alcohol lobby lose? I mean,
Correct.
This is one of the most powerful groups in the country, and for good reason. I mean, they make a lot of money, they donate a lot of money, a lot of people full time in Washington. So, do I talk to the WSWA? I don't. I don't have a direct line into them. Certainly, distributors that were at the show all tend to give the feedback that absolutely they are fighting, they're lobbying. There's too much at stake. You have, I think, Shad, you might get to this later. We're chatting about, I think, on the last show where I was talking about bottle shops in North Carolina, South Carolina, some of them saying that half the revenue is coming from THC. You had a Top 10 Liquors, which is based in Minneapolis. They had a banner behind one of the booths that said, hemp THC beverages now represent 10% of our sales, but someone had taken a sticky note and changed it to 20 because that's how much it had changed.
I believe it.
Since they made the banner. So, if you translate that to WSWA and they're looking at a segment of their business that's now growing, B 20% of their revenue, it's pretty difficult to see a scenario where they don't go full guns in pushing for regulation and definitely pushing against any sort of outright ban. So,
Right.
Huge component of our industry.
Why do you think this is growing so much? Question really for both of you. Like, we've talked about this a lot, Anthony, as well, but John, it's just 10, 20% sales. Like, I understand consumer trend behavior and how it changes. And when something new comes on, it grows. But these are some pretty staggering numbers. And when you look at the hemp industry as to how much it's grown over the past year to 2 years, it's mind blowing. But at this pace, like, this is probably one of the main priorities why big alcohol and in some ways big tobacco, this has on their radar. But is this a short-lived growth, or is this just going to keep on going for a long period of time, John?
Well, I think the growth of hemp-derived beverages is the second part of the equation. The first part of the equation was consumers deciding they didn't want to drink as much. And it probably wasn't reported as carefully because it was more flower and more smoke, and people were turning to cannabis, and there was, I think, some more anecdotal or they were sort of pairing the numbers of cannabis is growing, alcohol is going to. I think because it's the nature of a beverage, humans, it's kind of wired in our DNA. We like to socialize, we like to consume something while we socialize. Beverages are sort of how we've done it for a long time. I think people started drinking less. I think people are seeking out alternatives, and hemp-derived beverages sort of they fill this need of I want some light intoxication. I don't want to get destroyed. I don't want to be out of my head, but I do want to take the edge off after a long day or a fun weekend. And it appeared at the right time. It appeared at the time when alcohol was coming down and people were seeking a replacement, and it's filled that need. And just a quick follow on to that, I love it when because we have tons of samples, we're talking to people. If you talk to someone who is sort of laying off the booze, tell them about hemp THC, not a cannabis user. I mean, I think when all the hype was going on in cannabis in Canada 10 years ago, there was all this talk of the soccer mom and the curious canna, and it's taken a while, but these 5 milligram, 10 milligram beverages are finally what the quote soccer mom was actually looking for to be able to chill out and just relax. So
Interesting.
I think sort of all that whole confluence of people drinking less, looking for an alternative, and the right products appearing that actually fill a wellness yearning. That's what's brought us to where we are.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, when you look at some of these stats that have grown, I can understand that you announced last week a new distribution partnership with a company. It's called ZT Distribution. So this is a storied liquor channel operator, covers Wisconsin, Illinois, and Minnesota. So tell us a little bit more about what they are and maybe a deeper dive into their distribution reach within the 3 states I just outlined, because this is a distribution company that's been around for quite some time as to what you outlined.
Yeah, it's a great deal for our company, and it's sort of transformative and a fast growth in terms of we think revenue, but also just in terms of establishing ourselves in a new segment of the market. So ZT has been around for 100 years. This is a company that has distributed everything from leading beef jerky brands to leading the Celsius-like beverages and so forth. So
okay.
nothing to do with cannabis until now. So they built their business being one of the best distributors to over 1,000 grocery stores and some liquor stores, but grocery stores in the Midwest. So I think they understand merchandising, they understand the consumer, and obviously some really strong relationships with grocery stores. So they recognize what's going on in this segment. They're looking for products, and I'm here to give some light plugs. Happy Apple, all natural, no preservatives, great flavor. And when they looked at this product, they actually saw this not as living with the intoxicating beverages like beer and wine and so forth. They see this actually being put in like produce aisles, next to the fruit, because this is a fruit-based beverage. So I'm not going to say that's
really
where we're going to be placed, but yeah, it's they view this as, again, part of this consumer seeking health, consumer seeking alternative, and it's a pretty cool deal for us to be able to work with a company with this amount of experience. Again, we built our business with a different brand called Major, which is a high dose 100 milligram cannabis shot sold at dispensaries, and we've done well at that. That's the backbone of our business. That's most of our revenue to date. But to be able to layer on this true CPG opportunity to be in all these regular grocery stores with one of our products, it's really cool from, again, just a distribution standpoint, but also a growth standpoint, and learning about how the consumer is going to be able to interact and operate with our beverages.
Do you see that as a true endorsement of cannabis being part of, let's say, a wellness regimen, or cannabis being a wellness product? And also, is there any color you can give as per the grocers that the distributor will be putting the products into? Or is it major chains? Is it boutique grocers? Any color you can add around that?
Yeah, I would love to say a couple names. I can't on this particular discussion, but I would say the chains that we're working with are what you call as super regionals, people with 10, 20, 30 stores. Maybe not the 1,000-store behemoths that some of us all know, but certainly anyone living in Milwaukee or Chicago would know who these stores are. And yeah, sorry, and what was the first part? What was the first part?
Is this where you start to see the corporate recognition,
right,
for cannabis being a wellness product, especially being in the perimeter of the store within the fresh produce section? I mean, to me, that's an endorsement.
That's huge.
As to where this product should be living.
I think the consumers in Minnesota and Wisconsin are the ones who have endorsed this. And they've endorsed it so much that it's too big to ignore. So yeah, when it's been sold in typically liquor stores and sort of alternative smoke shop type places, but Minnesota was on the leading edge of putting hemp beverages squarely in the liquor store. And I think when owners of grocery stores see how people are consuming this, similar to beer but with much higher growth, it's just too big to ignore. I haven't spoken to the CEOs of these different grocery store chains. I mean, for all we know, some of them are not thrilled to endorse it. Maybe they're old school, and maybe they still see cannabis as sort of some kind of evil. I doubt that's the case, but it's possible. I just think it's at a point where the consumers are the ones driving this, and it's just getting too big to ignore.
Yeah.
So in the produce section, it's going to be in-store signage plus product placement right there in the produce section.
Yeah, you want to sort of think end caps, floor stands, displays, a couple days a week, maybe getting people sort of demoing, telling people about our product. Of course, us and most of your listeners, we all know what the effects are, but
Yeah.
it is still surprising when you talk to someone walking through and saying, "What's this?" and it's hemp THC. Um, you still get questions where people say like, "Oh, do you get hungover? How high am I going to get? How long does it take?" Like it's all the baseline. There's still a ton of education. And I think actually that's what brands, and that's what I'm sort of most excited about with this partnership with ZT, is the opportunity to educate new consumers and lead with our brand.
Speaking of education, has there been any talk of any sort of consumer sampling or experiential within the grocers, or that's down the road?
I think we're going to hold off on the sampling. I'd love it if it got to that point, but I think at the moment we're going to hold off on that. I think it's
Okay.
to get the placement.
Well, as they say, if you want to live a long life, stick to the outer aisles at a grocery store. You don't want to be stuck in aisle 8 beside Count Chocula. But that's telling, to say the least. But that it's just another example as to how this industry is growing. And I'm sure there are a lot of questions, and there should be a lot of questions off the top. But when you're getting that kind of placement in the produce section, you're a standalone all by yourself, and it's definitely going to grab a lot of people and consumers' interest. But maybe share some of the early performance metrics you're tracking, like SKU placements, velocity, and maybe repeat orders when it comes to a lot of this stuff and what you anticipate from it.
So with this particular deal, it's not launching until mid-August, so we've got a couple of weeks before I can report on this one. Looking backwards at our 3 other states, North Carolina, South Carolina, and a little bit of Texas. For better or worse, we launched Happy Apple right when the Texas sword rattling was going on. So not as deep in Texas, but when we look at stores in North Carolina and South Carolina, it's similar CPG metrics as any brands. It's looking at velocity, looking at reorders, looking at new accounts, and how fast do those new accounts reorder? How well can you service those accounts that have the highest velocity? So, unfortunately, sometimes the ones who are selling the most often actually require the least service because they're happy, it's selling, ship us more, etc. The ones who are struggling are the ones not struggling, but maybe your product isn't moving as quickly. Those are the ones that you have to put the most effort into, whether it's a vendor day or a demo day or giveaways or discounts, which we try and shy away from. But it's 80-20 rule is still in full effect. We're in I'm going to say, a couple hundred stores in North Carolina, South Carolina, and the top 20-25% drive most of our volume. I'd say actually probably the top 15% drive most of our volume. And you got to take care of those stores, and
Yeah.
you got to they ask us to jump, and we do it.
Yeah. Another stat I'm going to share for our viewers out there as to how much this industry is growing. Put into context, top 10 liquors in Minnesota recently reported of their total beverage sales are now hemp-derived THC drinks. So another stat. So in the markets you're in right now for Happy Apple, are you seeing kind of the same trends as far as the growth, popularity, and really a lot of the revenue that's being tracked to sales pertaining to it? Because that's your number one signature drink in the hemp industry. But are you seeing that in the markets you're operating and selling right now, I should say?
So for us, we have sort of 2 or 3 dynamics at play. As a company, we're seeing massive growth because we had 0 revenue from hemp 12 months ago.
Right.
So for us, launching this product, seeing the size and interest, just to sort of give a comparison, when we're selling major in our dispensary markets, we're selling, 3 or 4 cases, 12 product cases at a time. In this industry, it generally sells by the pallet. You're shipping pallets to stores or half pallets to stores. So it's margins are a little different, but it's a whole different scale. So as a company, we're saw some great initial growth. I think we're seeing a second wave of growth in North Carolina and South Carolina. Reasonably happy with the reorders that happen. But what I'll also say is, with growth and opportunity and momentum, there are a lot of brands that we're competing with, that everyone's competing with, and there is definitely a feeling of brotherhood, sisterhood. When you go to these conferences like the Hemp Beverage Alliance, everyone's talking to each other, trying to support each other, sharing different ideas. But But nonetheless, you still saw, I would say, 50, 60 different brands at that conference. When you walk into one of the stores that we're in North Carolina, um, you're still seeing yourself positioned against 20 or 30 other products. And when you wrap that in with sort of some lack of consumer education, um, it's going to take, I think, still more time before this really takes off. I mean, I think these 10, 20% numbers you're hearing from top 10 liquors, it's exciting because I think it is sort of just the start because people still are getting their heads around this.
Yeah.
But yeah, to answer your question, we're seeing reasonably good sell through for us as a company. It represents really high growth. I think overall the industry is growing, but yeah, there's still competition. It's not like you can run the table in these places.
In terms of marketing, like how are brands approaching that? Because you make a great point. When I go into Total Wine, me personally, I can differentiate between the products. I've seen most of them. I know what I'm going there to buy. Someone that is just passively seeing it or going there because they understand hemp beverages are going to be there. How are brands marketing? Are you leveraging, let's say, like geolocated ads that are driving people into brick and mortar with certain offers that are partnered with these retailers, or just doing passive advertising that's driving people into brick and mortar? How are you educating them before they get in there? Because unlike the dispensary model where they have bud tenders that are sitting there that you can then go do sales programs and educate those bud tenders, there's really no first line of defense. It's kind of just open season for what that consumer is going in there and ultimately choosing to purchase.
Well, I think the biggest marketing driver is it's not to go 101 on this, but it's have a product that has a unique selling proposition that stands out and stands for something. So, and I'll get to sort of some of the other things, the tactical stuff like geofencing and marketing. But when you look at that shelf at Total Wine, I mean, Anthony, I'm sure you've seen products that are just, they're so proud to be a THC beverage and they lead with that. It's like weird brand name, hemp-derived THC beverage. But then you look at it closer, like, what is this going to taste like? What is this? Is it sparkling? Is it still? Is it? So I think there are some brands that haven't really looked at this as you've got to, again, do your MBA 101 of do some messaging on what you stand for. In the case of Happy Apple, we stood for flavor, all natural, no preservatives. We led with that. That's an important component of our product. So there's also products that I see that are like, hey, we are 0 calorie and we're adding melatonin, or we're adding other mushroom adaptogens and so forth. Like those are great. I think those are key to marketing in this category. So I think that's just that's the baseline thing, but which you think everyone would be doing. But I think I'd say a third of cannabis beverages you see on the shelf, you don't really know what to stand for.
It's puzzling because I go in there and 30% of the flavors, I'm like, what were you guys thinking? Like, not to call out, I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of it, but I just see so many floral additives and like things like cardamom and huckleberry and lavender. And I'm like, guys, simple. You're correct. Simple and natural, which I also suspect that the consumer, especially a first time consumer, they're not educated enough to go in there and see, I'm getting natural or am I getting synthetic? What's the difference? And how can I even differentiate that? Which I do think is going to become paramount moving forward, because I'm seeing a lot of beverages pop up that look like they're health conscious, look like they're health forward, but they're not all natural. And they're not preservative free. And a lot of these consumers, especially from a wellness perspective, which is probably why you were able to command that placement in the fruits and in the produce section, was because you're all natural and preservative free, because there's a lot of brands that aren't doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And the consumer's got to figure it out for themselves, unfortunately.
So beyond that, I think things like doing them, it's hard enough to market the other marketing tactics. I mean, I think the online marketing with geofencing, that'll be great when we have a little more free reign to do what we all want to do on Meta and Google. But it's hard enough to market, even just to drive people to buy from your own website. There's a bunch of different tactics that you have to do to be able to do that successfully. So I think the marketing tactics that we're relying on are going to be a little more traditional in terms of, good-looking people standing by our product, telling people about it.
Of course.
Offering incentives, maybe a little bit of couponing to be able to drive some demand. I think contests are a really fun way to drive product curiosity as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your main demo for Happy Apple?
Yeah, it's 25 to 35, and we lean the marketing towards the female, towards
You do.
females. But it's sort of lean the marketing towards females without alienating males. So it's softer, it's more fun. I mean, we'll never have. Again, I have to compare it to our marketing with Major. Major is it's such an OG high dose product that
Yeah.
we'll do a lot of the typical cannabis marketing with that. Happy Apple, you're gonna see, we're always leaning towards people at a barbecue, women having fun together,
Gotcha.
people outside, people at maybe a beach or maybe a rave. But this is a fun, upbeat product about enhancing life. It's not about escaping life and zoning out. This is about enhancing and having fun. So Major is much more male oriented. It is heavy high and like let's get after it, sort of like Captain Morgan, if you will.
Yeah.
Happy Apple is I shouldn't say we tilt female. It's just it's a much softer approach. With all due respect to strong women.
I think you just said one of the most important things. It's enhancement versus escapism, because that's something that no one really talks about, or I haven't heard yet, and it makes complete sense. And it's where the category needs to go, because THC, cannabinoids at certain doses are there to enhance things, sure as hell not escape them. People use them for escapism, but yes, at that high dosage, things that I can't and most people can't handle. But the enhancement angle versus the escapist angle needs to be much broaderly talked about as it relates to these products.
Yep. This is sometimes our industry is trying to remake the wheel when the wheel has been created by Anheuser-Busch and everybody else. They've never ran ads about get bombed. They run ads about enjoying the game. And frankly, it's healthy. That's how life should be. It can be about
Watch just it. It's about building a lifestyle, and that's how you build a brand, right? We've seen Brady Cobb from Sunburn. He, has incorporated that with the Florida lifestyle. But I think that's the key. And then once you identify basically who your demo is and find out what their lifestyle is, it's just, you're right. It's enhancement versus escapism. And who wants to deal with a hangover? What you do as far as a marketing campaign around that, I'm sure there's a lot of things that you could explore and entertain. But it comes down to the name, the logo, everything about it to stand out. Because if you're trying to attract new consumers into this industry, a lot of questions are going to come. What is it? How does it make you feel? All this stuff.
You think about I'm dreaming a little bit here, but Super Bowl ads are the cultural divining rod for us. And if you think about a Super Bowl, of course, everyone in our industry uses the no hangover, but for a reason, because there is no hangover. But if someone were to run a Super Bowl ad of people enjoying a hemp beverage outside having fun, with some light education that like cannabis isn't about getting you totally high. Cannabis is about enhancing your life. And just if we got to that point, with a little bit of federal guidelines and regulation and standards, and we saw some flashpoints with ads like that, it'd be just a huge thing for our industry.
I think we're getting there. I think we're slowly but surely getting there.
Yeah, I think so. Well, the stats don't lie with some of the numbers that I've just ran, but Anthony, you understand this space better than I do. As far as marketing, as getting new audiences in there, and that's something you'd specialize to. And John, is just, how do you get new consumers in, and distribution partnerships and getting them outside of just cannabis dispensaries is obviously the first big step. But if you can have signage, in-store signage with product availability, and like you said, an on-site marketing team that's educating people on with a great appearance, then that's a huge step in the right direction. But I don't think you can underestimate that the product is available in some of these produce sections, which is really going to stand out from any kind of competition, let's say in, like I said, aisle 8, in the beverage section of a grocery store.
But that's why beverages have taken off. They're inviting. My wife doesn't want to go to a dispensary and buy product. She doesn't. No matter what I tell her, no matter how good of an experience I could tell her what it's going to be, she doesn't want to go to a dispensary and buy product. Would she buy product at Total Wine? Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, most people outside of our sphere interpret a dispensary like the employees are stoned, like it's not a very consumer friendly area, like I got to jump through hoops. Seeing these products in big box retail, from the liquor perspective, seeing them in grocery, like it changes people's perception in ways that we can't with products that are bound to being in a dispensary.
Absolutely.
And that's why you're seeing it boom, and that's why I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon, but up.
Yeah. Yeah. You talked. Go ahead, John.
I was just gonna say, like, I hope maybe if we talk in a few weeks or a couple of months, it'd be fun to be able to show some images of what it looks like to be placement non-stigmatized as a normal product.
I think it's a great idea.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to see at this conference too that a lot of people in the regulated market welcomed the news from Washington, and they want regulation, they want direction from Washington. Anthony, you made a point too. Like, no one wants to go into cannabis dispensary that isn't a, let's say, consistent flower consumer. Your wife doesn't want to go in because even in some states, like, again, I've used this example a few times in Michigan. Like, there's lots of people I speak to where it's legal both from adult use and medically, and they're worried about losing their jobs, because on the federal level, it's still classified as a Schedule I drug. So there's still so much misconception out there. And until you get direction from Washington, there's just, people are not going to go into a dispensary in fear of potentially losing their jobs. So I think once you actually build out these distribution opportunities like you did, John, this is the reason why, as I said, you got top 10 THC hemp-derived beverages ranking the top 10 liquors right now within the state of Minnesota. And that's just climbing everywhere in various states.
Yeah, and by the way, I probably saw 20 other well-established liquor distributors at the hemp show. It wasn't just us talking to each other. I mean, they're all looking, they're all angling, they all know what the stats are. So it's there. The inertia's there. I think the destigmatization is there. I think we have things. If you did the prohibition comparison, we have it sort of backwards. There was a period where beer was allowed and hard liquor was still banned during prohibition. In our case, we have liquor stores, the dispensaries that are legalized within states, but they're talking about banning beer. It just doesn't make sense.
Wow.
I don't think we're going to get a beer/hemp ban.
No.
It's a natural, healthy part of democracy that you have. I mean, when you see Rand Paul's position of increasing it to 1%, I don't agree with that, because I think there's plenty we can work with on the 0.3%. But you need people on both sides pushing their deeper agendas in order to come to the happy place.
This has happened before. You think back 100 years ago, there's movies about prohibition. Like, can you imagine if we had podcasts 100 years ago, what they're trying to do, try to bring alcohol across the line? Like, I know we look at this and say, this is something the first time we've gone through before, and I beg to differ. I think this is just, it changes with the times. But the same initiative as to what's going on towards the cannabis space is what alcohol went through, 100 years ago. Like, there's movies about Al Capone that were put together that are still notorious today's age, and we're still talking about 100 years later. And I know 30, 40 years from now, we'll look back at this and there'll be a new generation that'll look back and say, wow, it's crazy to think cannabis was classified as a Schedule I drug. And there is so much uncertainty around the hemp space. But, with change, there's always, uncomfortable times. But once you commit, that's where you, like you said, want a little bit of direction from the government. So that way we understand where we're going. Because once you understand where you're going, then you've got a game plan, right?
That's it.
Last thing I'll bring up, your Q2 financials showed steady revenue, gross margins retained around 75%. So if you could top line us, what'd you like? And I think more importantly, what's the big takeaway, I guess, from your latest earnings call?
Well, I mean, we were happy to grow again. Unfortunately, the U.S. dollar didn't really want to cooperate with us, so we grew our revenue by about 6 or 7%, and we saw roughly the same amount of depreciation in USD. And of course, we make all of our money in the States and convert it to Canadian dollars. So some discount from there, and then of course your parts of your balance sheet also get devalued because of the U.S. dollar, because we're based here. So we were glad to grow. We're glad to sort of maintain our gross margins. What we're looking to see, and again, been public in saying this about our company, is we have this baseline revenue that comes from royalties from major in about 10 different states. Okay. Well-established business. Happy Apple has really been in market. It was in market for half the quarter of Q2, or looking at a full quarter of Q3. This is additive new revenue for us, and it's not royalty. We're booking the top line of our wholesale revenue. So we're hopeful. Again, we're not, as our quarter ends at the end of August. We're hopeful that we're going to be able to book some revenues from ZT and one or two other distributors before the end of August. But it's early innings for us. We're hoping to sign 10 more deals like this, and we can't. They're out there. This is a big country with a lot of different players. So,
right. Is that what excites you the most, John, moving forward?
It is the, yeah, it's the, so I'm excited. Like, I'm still very excited about our dispensary business. I'm still very excited about what we're doing with Major and introducing some new derivatives of Major. Lots going on there that we're really thrilled about. But this is the white hot part of our industry. This represents the biggest growth opportunity for us, and absolutely, Happy Apple is what both keeps me up at night, but also wakes me up in the morning.
Yeah,
super excited to grow the company. So I think it's going to be a big driver for our revenue over the next 6 months. These things take time; it doesn't happen overnight. But once the snowball gets rolling, it's a whole different type of scale that we're looking at.
Yeah. Big takeaway, top 10 liquors in Minnesota recently reported of total beverage sales are now hemp-derived THC drinks, and hence the reason why you announced your latest distribution was ZT Distribution, which again covers Wisconsin, Illinois, and Minnesota. Good to see as far as the overall industry starting to expand and grow, and more importantly, the regulated side wanting some direction and welcomed it with open arms as to what Washington outlined as far as regulation in that 12-month timeline. So hopefully both industries, cannabis and hemp, as we know, are tied together, will look a lot differently in 12 months, which I firmly believe it will. What that looks like, don't know, but all we know is that there's going to be a lot of direction coming from Washington, and that's key for any industry to grow. So well done, and more importantly, let's keep in touch, okay?
Thanks for having me back. Great to see you both.
All right. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Hey everyone, we just eclipsed 50,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. We want to continue to grow this community. So if you haven't done so, make sure to subscribe now. We'd appreciate it very much here at the TDR Traded Black podcast. As usual, let's keep the conversation going. So leave your comments below and we'll get back to you with any feedback that you want to learn more of. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day and we'll see you next time on our latest Trade to Black podcast.